Why were running its charm, usability and simplicity of the C3's trump cards? We're finding out how it plays the month 1 month 2 specs life with the Citroën C3 month 2. The C3 earning its crust out of town the 1st of November 2017. A trip to Crewe to see the new Bentley Continental GT loomed, and I toyed with the idea of swapping the C3 for one of the more suitable long-distance cars on our test fleet. But in the end, I didn't, deciding that this was an excellent opportunity to see how the C3 fared outside of its urban remit. It's fair to say it didn't have the comfort or refinement of a Bentley Grand Tourer, but then what do you expect at a fraction of the price nonetheless? Citroën has a sharp focus on offering comfortable cars, and the C3 absolutely bears it out. There are very few cars in which I don't get fidgety or suffer from the common affliction of numbum on a 100-mile-plus journey. But with the C3, it never happened. I was happy all the way to Crewe and back to London again, via the Cotswolds. Even better, the C3's bench-like seats, inspired by those in the C4 Cactus, looked different from almost every other car makers out there. So they're not only incredibly comfortable but also original in design. A few weeks later, I headed to the depths of Suffolk for a yoga retreat. From my house, there is not the luxury of a direct motorway route. Instead, I traversed motorways, roads and broads before a final stretch on the never-ending A143. The journey had the same result. I was comfortable throughout. The C3 can also hold its own on higher-speed long journeys. Our car's 1.2-litre PureTech 110 engine is the most powerful in the range. That equates to a 062 mph of 9.3 sec, not enough to more than moderately pace motorway cruising, but sufficient. To get up to speed requires some persistent foot-down driving, but it's never to the point where you feel that you're desperately willing the C3 to accelerate more quickly. The other upside of long-distance journeys in the C3 is also the biggest downside for its natural environment of towns and cities. The gearbox feels notchy and rough when changing through its lower cogs. This makes stop-start urban journeys less fluid than you'd hope. So, of course, with no low-end gear changing necessary out of town, this isn't a factor. The Citroën also has firm rear suspension, which causes it to crash hard over speed bumps. That's unavoidable to an extent on roads like the one on which I live, which have the worst kind of speed bumps, but rival hatchbacks such as the Ford Fiesta feel better damped. Again, this is much less of a factor on longer journeys outside towns. So I've touched on its long-distance capabilities and my main woes on short journeys. But as my daily driver, covering 20 miles a day in the suburbs of London, this is a car I've become fond of. I'm now used to that less than brilliant ride and those no to smooth acid-like gear changes, and I'm enjoying the C3. It's also very practical. The boot's capacity is 300 litres, which is more than the Fiesta's, and it is cleanly shaped for optimum space. My Volkswagen Golf-owning mum, on seeing the C3's boot after a trip to a garden centre, remarked on how spacious it is. On that same visit, my mum, dad, partner and I piled into the C3 for a short drive for a Sunday roast. My 6 feet 2 inches partner drove us back home, with my 5 feet 4 inches mum sitting comfortably behind him, demonstrating a respectable amount of space for all occupants. It has also been very usable for transporting my 2-year-old niece in her car seat. And if anyone's seal of approval counts, it's hers. She said, on first seeing the C3, "I like your car. Nice wheels. Mileage 3,378. Back to the top life with the Citroën C3 month 1, suffering some audio woes the 11th of October 2017. I assure you, I am not mad. Yet when I listen to the radio in the C3, I find it sporadically repeating itself for 23 sec. It happens often. A more tech-savvy person than I suggested that the radio is switching between FM and DAB, which makes sense. Even so, I've not experienced it in any other car, and it's quite unnerving until you get used to it. Mileage 2,689. Welcoming the Citroën C3 to our fleet the 20th of September 2017. Citroën's C3 has never been a wildly popular car, easily eclipsed by better-looking and better-engineered rivals such as the Ford Fiesta and Renault Clio. But this reincarnation, its third generation, hails a step change, as the French carmaker looks to reinvent itself following its split with DS. That is now deemed the premium brand in the PSA group, while Citroën focuses on being fresh and different. Indeed, in place of its bubble-esque predecessor, this new C3 is infinitely better looking, with funky color themes and the option of those unusual air bumps, first seen on the C4 Cactus. We've opted for the top of 3 trims, Flare. It's a well-specified car that comes with a reversing camera, dark-tinted windows and a 7.0 inches touchscreen. It is also the only trim that gets those air bumps as standard. Otherwise, they cost £290. We've chosen the most powerful petrol engine to put through its paces, the PureTech 110 SS stop-start in 5-speed manual guise. The 3-cylinder 1.2-litre achieves 0.62 mph in 9.3 seconds, promises fuel economy of 61.4 mpg and CO2 emissions of 103 gkm. For comparison's sake, the equivalent Ford Fiesta is the 1.0-litre 123 bhp EcoBoost engine in titanium trim, which costs £17,295. That hits 0.62 mph in 9.9 sec, delivers 67.5 mpg and has CO2 emissions of 98 gkm. In short, slower but more economical. So what are my hopes for the C3? Well, I'd genuinely like there to be a new contender for one of the top spots in the super mini sector. The Fiesta, for all its outright goodness, is pretty dull in my book. I'd like the C3 to not only look attractive but perform attractively too, so it can compete. Citroën loves to harp on about its focus on comfort, so I'm intrigued to see how well the car absorbs the endless speed bumps on my road, plus plenty of uneven road surfaces. Comfort also plays an important part in the interior. Will I become fidgety when I'm stuck on the North Circular in a torturous Sunday afternoon traffic jam? It's the first time I've lived in London with a Super Mini, which I've always thought the perfect type of car for such a setting. But I'm interested to see if it's usable in its compactness too. My beau and I are still busy fitting out our house, so the odd trip to IKEA is inevitable. We also have a lively 2-year-old niece to regularly accommodate in the back of the car. My relationship with PSA Group infotainment systems isn't the best. A previous Peugeot 308 GTI long-termer had a painful TOWS system. Already, I can see a vast improvement with the revamped version in this C3, so I hope it's really up to the job. Other early impressions: it has a great, original interior design, there's enough power for most types of driving, and there's work to be done on the over-firm rear suspension. Alongside lots of inevitable town running, I have a few high-mileage trips coming up, so I'll be putting the C3 to the test in every sense. I want it to be worthy, but my first instincts are that it won't quite match up to its key rivals. Will it prove me wrong? Second opinion: Citroën has always seemed at its best building cars with character, and the confident design of the C3 certainly stands out in a crowded small car market. Of course, fun cars with character can become tiresome to live with long-term. Here's hoping the C3 stays charming over time. James Atwood. Citroën C3, Flare 1.2 PureTech 110 specification specs price new £16,685 price as tested £18,280 options metallic paint £495 7.0 inches touchscreen and sat-nav £500 keyless entry and start £250 17 inches alloy wheels £200 red urban ambience £150 test data engine 1199 cc turbocharged petrol power 108 bhp torque 151 pounds-ft top speed 117 miles per hour 0.62 mph 9.3 sec claimed fuel economy 61.4 mpg test fuel economy 44.0 mpg code 2 103 gkm faults none expenses none back to the top.